All right, welcome everyone to this really important discussion tonight. Just want to say thank you for spending the amount of time that you're going to spend tonight. I'm going to into a really important issue. I just want to highlight three things before we start up. Three yeses. So first yes is yes, this is being recorded and we will be posting this up video, audio tomorrow on Shift Press. So make sure you're following us on social media, or you can head directly to Shift.press tomorrow by noon. Um, the second yes is there will be time for questions and discussion. So you don't have to wait to put your questions or points of discussion in the chat. The sooner the better, so we can get your commentary and for our speakers to engage your questions. And lastly, you can support our journalism. Shift Press holds discussions like these because our mission is tied to ensuring that everyone has what they need, especially young people, to be democratically active and civically active in our communities because that's what makes us better. So I'm dropping a link in the chat that would allow folks to support discussions like these and to continue the work, the youth movement journalism that we do. You can also sign up for our newsletter, which will make sure that you're in tune with every single thing that we do. You can see that at our link tree. And with that, I will pass it over to our first speaker, Jason Oliver.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. I am going to share my screen. Um, I'm Jason Oliver. I wear a few hats, but one of those that I'm really proud of is, can everybody share my screen, first of all? I mean, can everybody see my screen, first of all? Great. So, one of the hats I'm proud of is I'm the board chair of Shift Press. I'm also the founder and principal of Southern Resources, advocacy lead for Hugh Arts in Action, which is an arts advocacy initiative where we talk about things like the budget and the manager of the Third Ward Cultural District. So I'm going to go through just a brief 101 for the budget. Please feel free to jot questions in the chat, and thank you to some of you who submitted questions in advance. So first, where's city money going, right? People have this question. These are our expenditures. So we spend money in a few different buckets. Our enterprise funds, which are services that people pay a fee for, like your water service, right? General funds, which are our operating budgets. And then we have a few others, but the main the main kind of category that we talk about when we're talking about the city budget being approved is the general fund because that is about half of the overall budget, 3 million of the 7 million. And enterprise funds, you can't really use the money you pay for your water bill to get your trash picked up, right? So this is why when you see people talking about the upcoming budget or the budget gap, they're really talking about the general fund and how we're going to fix the budget gap in terms of the general fund. Next up, revenue sources. So where does the city's money come from? So you can see here a general overview coming from the city. So I use the city's budget documents to highlight, of course, property taxes. That's where a lot of our general fund revenues come from, water and sewer. That's where those enterprise funds that we talked about that we can't really use for some of the other city services that we really care about come from. And then we have a big bucket of other, but sales taxes. You all might realize that we have a city sales tax. We don't have an income tax here in the state of Texas, but we do have sales taxes, aviation, and franchise fees, right? But the two biggest items are really the three biggest items: property taxes, your water and sewer fees, and then sales taxes are three of the kind of main items that we have for revenue sources. Where's city money going? So I said this already, but I really want to point out that general funds are the biggest bucket that we really want to focus on when we're talking about the city budget. That's all you're going to hear about when we're getting into the city's budget cycle. So now, talking about the budget cycle, uh, we're looking through departments within the general fund. Once you're going through and looking through the budget, you're going to see this is how our funding is allocated. So, police by far are the department that takes up the largest chunk of this operating budget, our discretionary funds, which is the general fund budget. Fire coming in second at 22%. And then debt, surprisingly, right? Like debt comes in at 17%. So much larger than the much larger than like the rest of our departments that you see. So an issue like solid waste, where people are often concerned about their trash being picked up on time, you see the disparity in terms of prioritization and how we're spending money on solid waste or parks and rec, right, or the libraries, or even the health department from our general fund compared to other departments like police and fire. That doesn't mean that this is the only money that the city spends. They do receive a lot of grant funding, which many or grant or private dollars, which many of these departments rely on. So that is also important to note when we're thinking about where your dollars are going here from the city. What's the budget timeline? So we're coming up on the budget timeline. You may have seen some articles in local publications about concerns about the budget gap. The fiscal year for the city runs July 1st to June 30th. So in about 2.5 months, we'll be approaching the end of the fiscal year. The new budget is going to be released. The proposed budget is going to be released in less than a month. So on May 5th, right? There will be workshops, public budget workshops, May 5th to the 19th. City Council is expected to vote on the budget on June 3rd, but adjustments are made throughout the year. We have grant applications that are approved throughout the year. Like I said, that is really important for many of the city departments, even police, which receive, of course, the huge share of the general fund that they do also receive a lot of grant funds, which some of you might have heard about in the news recently. And then the capital improvement plan, which Alice and I talked a little bit about, which deals with infrastructure, right? Your streets, your streets, some of the buildings, right? Those plans, which is a 5-year plan, is approved in late June. Ways to get involved in the process. So the budget workshops, again, are completely public. You can either go to City Council or watch online on HTV or on Facebook. You can, and I'll make sure that these slides are shared out so that you'll have access to these links. There are monthly Budget and Fiscal Affairs Committee meetings where you can go and talk about your thoughts, share your thoughts about the budget or concerns or things that you're excited about in terms of the prioritization at the city. City council meetings in general, and then talking to your city council representatives. If you have ideas for budget amendments, things that you'd like to see implemented with the budget, I absolutely encourage you to share that. And then informational resources. So the city of Houston has a vast budget archive explaining, a vast budget archive showing the documents of the past. You can see how much we may have spent on a certain department or initiative 10 or 20 years ago, even. There's a budget explainer that was created by local advocates at houstonbudget.cool. You can watch some of the council meetings and then past budget workshops at hewatch.com. And then there's an open finance portal that you can go to that the city of Houston put out a couple years ago, where you can find information there. And a few things that I look for. So when I'm looking through budget documents, I look for the budget allocation, right? How much money is the department getting, and is that changing? Is the number of full-time equivalents or full-time equivalent employees? That gives you a rough estimate of how many people are working within this department or within a particular program. That tells you whether something is prioritized. Department performance measures can give you a little bit of information about how many people are being served or whether something is important to the city. The Houston open data portal, the changes in the capital improvement plan, if there is an initiative that you're watching in your neighborhood that you care about, that is a great way to track and make sure that those projects are still taking place in the time where you expected them. And then grants, right? Watching for those grants that are coming in. Um, Emily Hines puts out a weekly summary of the city council meetings, and she'll often talk about grants, significant grants that have been received at the city. And just very briefly to show you what some of these performance measures look like. So here's the Department of Neighborhoods, which has a division called New American Services. You can see that their fiscal year 2026, that's the fiscal year we're in now, their expenditures are about $386,000. They're measured in thousands. And they have two FTEs, so two employees in that year. But you can see all the things that they're doing, right? 10 citizenship forums, expected to serve 100,000 immigrant and refugee residents, providing interpretation services, and so on. So these are just some of the things that I encourage you to look at and keep an eye on when you are paying attention to the City of Houston budget. And I'll stop there. And
Awesome.
next up, we have Alice Liu, who's really going to take you a little bit deeper into what's going on in the city's budget.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. And I think it's so great to have these tools at our disposal as we think about and discuss for the rest of today's workshop uh, exactly what is at stake in this year's budget and why now, out of all years, is a great time to get tapped in. So I will go ahead and share my screen. Okay, awesome. So, hi everyone. My name is Alice, and I am here wearing multiple hats. I'm here representing West Street Recovery and the Northeast Action Collective, and I'm also here to talk about the Houston People's Budget Campaign, what we're fighting against, and more importantly, what we're fighting for as we engage with the budget process leading up to the vote on June 3rd. So I wanted to just start with a few numbers. Um, Last year, some of y'all might have been involved in Houston Says No, and the People's Budget Campaign is really growing out of that effort in response to a very acute crisis of budget cuts and overfunding the police at both the Harris County and the city of Houston. So, just to recap what happened in last year's budget, on the county side, they raised constable pay by 140 million, and they cut social services by at least $48 million, including cuts to the Harris County Public Health, Engineering, and Housing and Community Development departments. On the city of Houston side, they just last year raised police pay by $67 million as part of an almost $1 billion contract to raise police pay over the next 5 years. And the mayor also spent several months negotiating down the city's obligation to fully fund drainage with taxpayer dollars, and ultimately negotiated a settlement to underfund drainage by $90 million. And on top of that, the city of Houston cut social services by $122 million, really broadly across almost every department except for police and fire, but health, libraries, and parks were some of the hardest hit. And unfortunately, the situation is not getting any better this year. In fact, we are getting deeper into this fiscal crisis. So on Harris County, the projected deficit is $160 to $220 million. In the city of Houston, we're going to see the second year of the police raise, which is going to cost the city an additional $122 million. And the projected deficit as a result of that is $174 million. Overall, incredibly concerning, and there are two competing narratives of what this fiscal picture means. in order to understand what we might expect in terms of budget cuts before the mayor's budget is released next month, we can take a look at the impact of last year's budget cuts and what has already happened in terms of staff and funding for already strained city departments. So just getting into some specifics, health department lost 4 million, neighborhoods lost 7 million, libraries lost 1.8 million, and parks lost $4 million. This is on top of years, if not decades, of underfunding. And we also saw some very serious reductions in the city's workforce. There was a early retirement incentive that was implemented that resulted in over 1,000 employees leaving. Unfortunately, the number on the slide is incorrect. That was actually 10% of the city's total workforce. And 882 of these positions will not be backfilled. This is what we're seeing as part of an overall trend of this, fortunately, privatizing and contracting out services that used to be done in-house by public employees. And this is from the mayor's official press release after the budget was approved last year. $122 million in strategic cuts with no reduction in city services. So this is the big lie that we've seen again and again at every level of government that has sort of implemented these austerity measures, is that we are, we're gutting departments, we are reducing the workforce, we're asking all departments to decrease their overall budget. And this is actually a part of efficiency, right? This is, we're addressing the problems of government being overstaffed, and we're going to be able to reduce the budget without impacting city services. But this is obviously a lie. And we've already seen, after just 1 year of this level of cuts, the impact that residents and workers are feeling. And overall, we know the reality is that there is no more room to cut. And some examples of the impacts on departments can be seen most prominently with Public Works and Solid Waste, who are responsible for drinking water, sewage, transportation and drainage, garbage, recycling, and heavy trash. So when we think about literally what we need most fundamentally as humans to live, right? Like water, access to public infrastructure. These are the departments that are really holding up these services. And we see with both of these departments, really, really major staff shortages from the early retirement incentives last year, but also from years of unfilled vacancies in their departments, poor retention due to workers being underpaid and facing bad working conditions. And also an aging fleet of vehicles and machinery, some of which are even inoperable. And of course, this is having an impact on the services for folks who are living in Houston. So this was highlighted in the news a lot last year, but solid waste is really having major issues. There were 36,000 service complaints for trash pickup in 2025. And on the side of drainage infrastructure, which is what West Street Recovery and Northeast Action Collective focuses on, we just learned recently that drainage programs that we fought really hard for years are ridiculously behind schedule. So they've only spent 30% of their funding so far for fiscal year 2026. With only a couple months left in this fiscal year, they're 70% behind on spending for ditch reestablishment and local drainage projects. We can also see how this is impacting City of Houston workers. It's not just police and firefighters who are on the front lines across every city department. These are essential workers who are carrying out critical public services, oftentimes also first responders during emergencies. So I wanted to highlight a few quotes, testimonies from City of Houston workers. I work at the 311 call center. Since 2016, there has been a drastic shift. We have gone from 100 people to 40 people. With the calls, you can tell that the quality of things has gone down the drain, but the cost citizens pay to be here has gone up. from a solid waste worker, we had to fight for boots recently. Cap temperatures in solid waste trucks were 140 degrees, which actually led to a a truck driver, being hospitalized for 3 days. And also from the 311 department, filing for medical leave is the only way you're going to be able to get some time off. So we can see with worker testimony so far the key issues that workers have been fighting for years, which has only gotten worse in the past year, are issues of safety, staffing, being overworked, underpaid, and also overall concerns with losing jobs to contractors and private corporations, which have even less regulations in terms of working conditions and are not unionized as many city workers are. And I also wanted to share that city workers have a deep love and passion for their job and their role in the community. Folks are saying, I want to stay despite all of these challenges that we're facing. I want to help change and shift the culture right now. And I care about the community we serve. And very importantly, in terms of being engaged with this year's budget process, I care about letting people know what they're missing out on when the budget is lopsided. And we can see, just to draw a parallel with what's happening at the city and county level with the high profile departmental guts happening at the federal government, to healthcare, to SNAP, to FEMA, to national parks, the Department of Education. It's so obvious just how violent cutting these social services are. And for us at the city level, as we go into this budget fight, engaging with local government and our local budgets is one way that we can fight to mitigate some of the violence and some of the impact that these federal cuts are having on residents and on people. So once again, this is not new, but right now, this year and the next few years, we are at a critical turning point. We are at a crossroads in terms of our vision for what Houston can be, and for resisting what the city and decision makers right now's path that they're putting on the city. So their solution is austerity, right? We're seeing funding police and military by gutting social services and using the budget and using the fiscal crisis, which is very real, as a tool to weaken democracy, to transfer wealth to the private sector and make life harder for the working class. And what is happening is being in a vicious cycle, right? Like folks who born and raised in Texas, and for people who live in states like Texas and in the South, we have known all our lives that our expectations for what we can deserve from the government have been constantly lowered year by year. And so it's this cycle of where city services are being continuously delegitimized, and that is then used as an excuse, a justification for privatization and for the further cutting of public funds. So this is where the Houston People's Budget comes in. We're fighting for a budget that actually works for us, for our hard-earned tax dollars, and our government to be for the people and not special interests. And this is really going to be grounded in protecting social services, funding public infrastructure, and protecting workers. And I wanted to take a step back and give a little bit of movement history for how we got to this point of engaging with the budget in a way that is pro-democracy and pro-public services. So since 2018, the Northeast Action Collective has been fighting for increased drainage infrastructure within the city of Houston and the county budget. The Northeast Action Collective is a group of flood survivors who came together after Harvey to say, hey, disasters are actually political. These conditions that we're facing of having our houses flood and having no one come to support us in the aftermath, that is a political choice that has been made by the people in power, and we're not going to accept that as a status quo. So through years of engaging with the City of Houston budget in 2023, we were actually able to create a brand new program called the Ditch Reestablishment Program, which through which the city once again took responsibility for ditch maintenance. And this program was funded with $45 million in the budget. So this was a huge win, and it showed that consistently showing up, speaking truth to power, changing the media narrative can result in real material wins within the budget process, despite how undemocratic it is. And moving forward to Houston Says No last year, shout out to the incredible protesters and activists who were in City Hall the day that last year's budget vote passed. Houston Says No came together, brought together folks from across Houston, not just focused on drainage, but broadly focused on social services, opposing the new police raise and opposing the way that Whitmire was approaching the budget in a deeply undemocratic way. And through Houston Says No, we were able to get 3 Houston city councilors to actually vote no on the budget the day of the vote. That is the highest number of no votes that has happened in the past decade. And we also changed the media narrative. So at the beginning of the budget season, the mainstream media was basically reflecting Whitmire's claim that there were going to be these budget cuts and they weren't going to impact services. And we saw on the day of the budget vote, this is ABC 13, right? Like the news channel that our grandmas watch at home, and they are framing it exactly in the way that we want, where this is a $7 billion budget. It increased police pay and it cut city services. Okay, so as we're fighting for public services, probably the number one pushback that we're going to get is that the city is broke. It doesn't have money to be able to fund these services. But as Jason has mentioned, as many people in this room know, unfortunately, our government is always able to find money for police. City council last year approved unanimously a $1 billion HPD contract, making it the highest paid police department in Texas. So this is something that we want to make sure that folks don't forget as we're talking about how the city got into the fiscal crisis that we're in currently. And Jason shared earlier, HPD already takes up the vast majority of general fund spending, about 60%. And we can see at $1.1 billion, how HPD funding absolutely dwarfs funding for other departments, including public works, libraries, parks. So where can, besides reducing police spending, there are also other non-regressive ways that Houston can begin to address its revenue problem. Some examples of revenue solutions include reducing corporate tax abatements. So the city of Houston currently gives away $93 million a year to fossil fuel corporations through property tax discounts, basically, closing loopholes on developers' fees, implementing an equitable solid waste fee, which solid waste workers have been fighting for at City Hall, and of course, the elephant in the room, addressing the property tax revenue cap, which since 2014 has deferred over $1.4 billion from city funding. So the Houston People's Budget, the 3 core tenets: protecting social services, protecting workers, funding public infrastructure, taxing corporations and the wealthy, and opposing police overspending. Skip that. And we're hoping to bring together organizations and residents across some core issue areas. So West Street Recovery and Northeast Action Collective will be anchoring climate change and flooding as a core issue that should be addressed within the City of Houston budget. We'll also be working with Texas Campaign for the Environment and Ignition Front, among several other organizations. We also want to highlight how the City of Houston city budget is an issue that deeply impacts the working class. And we want to highlight that workers' rights and resident services come together as actually a single issue in the budget. What's good for City of Houston workers is going to be what's good for anyone who lives in the City of Houston. And finally, we want to highlight immigration, of course, highlighting the incredible years of months of organizing work that has gone into the immigrant justice campaign, trying to address HPD's collaboration with ICE, and highlighting that Houston is a city that is a city of immigrants, and the budget should reflect that as well. Besides these, we're also hoping that experts and groups who are already active in the following issue areas can take the lead on organizing conversations around the budget within their own areas, including arts, housing, parks, health, and libraries. So overall, the goal of the People's Budget Coalition is to build solidarity between climate, immigration, labor, transportation, and arts to express public dissent and a positive vision of Houston's future, to build our long-term power inside and outside City Hall, building off of other movements and campaigns that are primarily targeting local government, and to set the terms of the conversation and set an expectation for democracy in Houston. Some specific goals that we have in the short term are the Northeast Action Collective will be advancing a set of specific policy changes that are focused on protecting drainage funding and protecting equitable drainage programs within the budget. We hope once again to be impacting the media narrative and turning up the heat at City Hall towards decision makers, making sure that our local government officials know that we, as the people, are watching how they move and how they vote on the budget. And this is not something that we're going to forget once budget season is over. And finally, passing amendments and getting no votes on the final budget because we are expecting the worst. Okay, getting into what the next couple months are going to look like. We are currently here at the Shift Press webinar. And for the rest of April, we're hoping that we can have that specific issue area organizing, and we'll also be having more public engagement events, including an art build and testimony training on April 26th, a reading circle on austerity on April 29th, some collaborative programming with May Day and labor happening the first week of May. And then, as Jason shared earlier, the official City of Houston budget workshops will be happening from May 12th to May 19th. And there will also be a number of public hearings that we can go either to ask questions or disrupt. And this will all be leading up to the final vote on June 3rd. So how can individuals get involved? I will share a link shortly to join the People's Budget Campaign WhatsApp and our listserv, and to follow our Instagram account. Come to any of our upcoming events, sign up to give public comment and speak at budget workshops. And if you feel particularly impassioned, you can post on Instagram like a video or a photo, and we'll collab post with you with the Houston People's Budget Instagram account. And if you are a leader or you're active in one of the issue areas or departments that I highlighted earlier, we really encourage you to do some organizing over the next 6 weeks. This could look like convening and educating people within your issue area. I know last year there was an arts funding focused town hall. You can sign your organization on to the People's Budget Campaign. And if you want to be a spokesperson to media and at events, please get in touch with us and we can include you in our media outreach over the next few months. And all of the links for what I just shared are available at htxpeoplesbudget.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alice. Can we give a round of applause for both Alice and Jason for explaining all of that so well? So this is a time for Q&A and discussion. We got plenty. Oh, we even have folks who already want to, get a spokesperson. So this is great. Things are already happening. This is the this is the time to talk about a couple of different questions. We did get a couple of questions before before this discussion. But if you have any new questions, drop them in the chat. One of the questions that I saw is about a deferred maintenance. Um, Alice, did you want to chat or just explain deferred maintenance? And then I can also provide a link and a couple of resources that talk about how much we actually owe at the moment in the city, if you can.
I'm actually a little bit out of my depth. I don't know how much the city owes in deferred maintenance.
I can link that. I can link that. If you can explain deferred maintenance or Jason.
Wait, actually, do you want to explain deferred maintenance? Is that allowed?
Yeah, please. If there.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, deferred maintenance is typically, and by the way, I'm affiliated with Strong Towns Houston, so and Strong Towns nationally, so we talk about deferred maintenance all the time. This is basically that, when the city agrees to put down infrastructure, it's not only that they agree to, help steward the building of it with state and federal dollars, but they also take on the obligation to maintain it. But over time, as a city like Houston grows, some people use sprawl, some people use waste. I'll let y'all pick whichever word you want. When a city like Houston keeps growing and keeps getting new tax dollars in the newer developments to kind of pay for some of the older stuff, unfortunately, over time, the new tax dollars don't quite cover the existing or the previous obligations for prior streets. And so this idea of deferred maintenance is just, the city kicking the can down the road. Well, we're going to use the new tax dollars for the infrastructure over in Spring Branch to pay for some other stuff. But turns out that those single family homes weren't generating the revenue that we thought they were. So we're just going to have to put this, I live in Fifth Ward. We're going to have to put the potholes in Fifth Ward to the side until we can get some money to do that. So that's basically, yeah, deferred maintenance is just kicking the can down the road. I think I don't quote me on this, but I think I've heard Controller Holland say that we're like in like the hundreds of millions of dollars in deferred maintenance. But I just don't know how quite accurate the city maintains that information in like a public document.
Thank you for that. I'm not one to shout out the Greater Houston Partnership very often at all. But I just dropped a link in the chat that estimates a couple billions, possibly.
Good
So
Lord.
yeah, we're kicking the can down the road. We're kicking whole grocery stores down the road of cans, full of cans.
Yeah, and just to mention briefly, it's kind of a hard thing to estimate. Yeah, it's kind of a hard thing to estimate exactly because, we know our water infrastructure is kind of shot, right? We're losing a lot of water that runs through the city's pipes. Our roads, what does it mean to say that certain roads need to be fixed and some roads? So it's hard to say exactly, right? And the firefighter collective bargaining was something that was brought up. Of we're not completely clear on what the liability is, and we're seeing some of that come into play right now, where we're expected to have to pay an extra, what is it, 12 million or something, because we weren't clear in the contracts that we signed for this settlement with the firefighters. So there's a lot there, but thank you for bringing up the question. Other questions?
I have a couple questions that were submitted earlier before the webinar about police and fire. I'm going to actually ask this question a little differently for Alice and Jason to take in any way that they like to. We see, why does the police budget go up every year so much? And what are the power levers that they're using in order to get such massive raises that we're now sitting in right now?
I'll talk about that briefly. It goes up so much because the base amount is so much, right? So if you've got it's a lot easier for the police budget when it's over $1.1 billion to go up by another $100 million. It's much easier for that to happen than like our general fund housing budget is $1.6 million, right? They're not going to get an extra $100 million, even though we could absolutely use an extra $100 million toward housing. So part of it is just the inertia. This ball that's rolling downhill is already huge. We've already got a mountain of police spending. So even just a 10% raise to to the police when they're already the highest paid department at the city means that that is going to be so much of a bigger impact on police than it is on other departments. What we also see is some creative budgeting at the city level where the police were very clear about they set their overtime budget equal to last year. Now, if you follow the news, they went they doubled their overtime budget last year. So let's say you set it for your overtime budget is 40 million, you spend 80 million. But next year you budget another 40 million. So they budgeted 40 million, but remember police got a 10% raise as well. So they haven't budgeted for the overage and they also haven't budgeted for the raises, right? So everything that Controller Hollins is saying about the predictability of us going over budget in terms of overtime is very much predictable. They were very clear about it during the budget workshops.
And I also got a question. I mean, you kind of answered already about us going a little bit over budget, but we got some questions of, are the police and fire payouts going to cause a balloon that will pop soon? Doesn't seem like there's enough money in the budgets to keep up due to the revenue cap. Any comments on that? Go ahead, Jason.
The money is going to have to come from somewhere. We have to pass a zero balance budget. Some things in the budget, you'll hear the county often talk about what is discretionary, right? Like libraries are not a thing that they have to do as a county, right? That is a nice to have legally. So as we see money being, as they're required to pass a balanced budget, that means all of their expenses match their revenues. What we're going to see is cuts to the other departments, which is exactly what we saw last year in Houston and in Harris County to cover the increases to these major police raises and the fire raises at the city.
Another personal point of privilege that I'd like to ask before we jump into a different point of discussion. Alice, did you want to add something?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to touch on both of those questions a little bit. I mean, I think it definitely it's everything that Jason said in terms of the sort of inertia, and it also just reflects the massive institutional and political power of the police union. I mean, Whitmire was literally a lawyer for the police union. Like that's as simple as and as direct of a line as it gets. And of course, like it's not just at the local level. There is a state law that prevents cities from ever decreasing the police budget. So I think that's something that I mean, it's extremely like I don't, I try not to spiral when I think about it, but it's like every time the police budget is raised, which it will be raised massively over the next 4 years, that is an increase that at the state level means that it can never go back down again. So I think it sort of as a movement, it's important to I mean, I don't know legally if it's possible to like revert it, probably not, but I think we almost need to we can't just accept it as something that is unfortunately it is baked into the budget, but we can't accept it as something that like, oh, this is just like a part of the status quo now. I think every single year that it's raised, we have to keep fighting it, and we at least like publicly we can't give up on it.
Thank you for that. And that leads to this a discussion on what Governor Abbott has threatened to do here in Houston. Um, if you haven't been on the news and just keeping up with what's going on, as a result of some measures that the city of Houston passed to weaken Houston's collaborations with Immigration's Customs Enforcement, better known as ICE. Governor Abbott threatened to cut $100 million in what so-called public safety grants from Houston. I'm aware that that probably is what this question is in regard to, so please let me know if it's not, but there will be some sort of vote or engagement on that this Friday, and the question is whether or not the People's Budget Campaign can rally up some engagement on that this Friday. I know it's all coming so fast.
Well, I think maybe that's a question we can answer in this room. Like, I know there are folks who have been much more deeply involved on that campaign than I have. Like, shout out to you. Well, I mean, I'm interested in what people see as the connections there and how this might fit into the campaign as well. If you want to come off and share.
I can add a little bit. I was not expecting this to speak. So I'm gonna link first off, like for the Friday meeting that I wrote down. There's a call to action to send and writes like emails and calls to council members. So I'll do that after I speak. But yeah, I mean, I think like the connection is like very I don't know how to phrase this, but like actually no, I need to think more. So I'll have Sakia go.
Okay, yeah. Thank y'all for hosting this. I I'm curious and interested in this meeting, just because of its connection to the public safety and like HPD and other public safety offices here in Houston, and like how that grant money would affect this proposed budget that Whitmire and City Council is talking about. Like, would that make them want to increase? Like, if they decide to vote that they're going to keep this Prop A, how would that affect the proposed budget? Would that make Whitmire like feel justified to increase the budget because they're no longer getting that state grant? Or like, what are the implications of that when it comes to this proposed budget? That's what I'm curious about.
Also, yes, this is being recorded, and yes, no one will see anyone's faces because it'll just be vocal overlay of a static image that we're making, and I am muting out names whenever you say it. So the less times you can say a name that's on here, that's the better. But I am gonna mute out every mention of a name, which is totally cool. But thank you for asking that question. That is a good no, that this may be very much interconnected. Did anyone want to directly engage that?
Oh wait, yeah.
I'm so. Oh,
No, go ahead, Alice.
did you want to speak?
Yeah, my brain finally thoughts and now I can make the connection. But I mean, it's a very simple one that I think everyone here already knows. But like yeah, Abbott is understanding the budget dynamics that we have. He understands who John Whitmire is. And so like we know, so the ordinance that was originally passed, that was a watered down version of what we actually really wanted as a first step, is something that both the city of Dallas and the city of Austin have already done. And the state did not go after them for their actions. But for us, they did for us. For a lot of reasons. One, Houston is always ground zero for the state of Texas. If you pay attention to all the state laws that get passed of preemption, it's typically in response of something Houston does. Think like the not mail-in, but the drive-by voting efforts. Think of all the other really cool effort, like the county's guaranteed income program, things like that, right? So also, I mean, this is more political, but like I think Ken Paxton is doing this as well because he wants to win his primary runoff against Cornyn, so he wants to look more right than his opponent. But yeah, so they understand our political dynamics, and so by pulling public safety funding as a hammer or a threat, he knows that he can pressure the city council members to go against like this ordinance. And like what we're expecting, obviously we're going to show up by Friday, but what we're expecting is that most, if not all, of the council members will probably reverse course because they know that like the electorates and the people that they talk to, their donors, need and want policing. And so like they know their leverage points and they know our deficit situation. So they're very keen on like how they've done this. Um, I think one thing that I'm thinking of, like as we have done this campaign, is the timing of the ordinance. I'm kind of curious if if we introduced this push after the budget cycle, if they would not have had as much leverage as they do currently because we're about to vote on the budget. Um, I was going to make another connection, but it's more like the county side, so it's not as applicable with the city.
Go ahead.
The other thing, I mean, Jason said it right. The county is also, needs to balance its budget, but we're about to be required to go into a 287G agreement between our county sheriff and ICE. So 287G is different forms, but in a nutshell, it's like different levels of our local sheriffs to become ICE agents in some form or fashion. This was state law that was passed last year. And so the thing about that is it does not allow, it doesn't give federal funding for local agencies to do that. So fundamentally is that the sheriff's office is going to ask for more money as a requirement. And so that's like another thing for the fall, that, for folks who work on the county budget to be aware of that. Yeah, increasing of that budget is in direct response of this new state law, which would mean also deprivation of funding for all of our other services.
I think I'm really glad that you made the connection to the county budget there because the Houston People's Budget Campaign, it is going to be spanning between the city and the county. And of course, it's not going to be just this year. So the hope and the goal is to be building a coalition of folks who are ready to engage in both of those budget processes and are drawing the same narratives between, of course, like overfunding of police, overfunding of these institutions that collaborate with ICE, and the same budget cuts on both sides as well. And also, thank you for the earlier question. As was shared in the chat, if you are interested in having more of these strategic discussions, we have a WhatsApp, and I would highly encourage you to join. I hope to see folks there because this is a campaign that is being actively shaped and will keep growing and keep developing over the next few weeks.
Awesome. So I got a question that's a little bit more taking us at a bird's eye view. It's how many of our current budgetary problems are rooted in 10-year-old plus decisions? I know there's plenty to say, especially as we see our former mayor, Anise Parker, running for county judge. I mean, that's even more than 10 years, but I think that there's plenty to say on her tenure as mayor and how many of the things that we're going through at the city, especially in regards to flooding infrastructure, started during that tenure. But is there anyone who wants to chat about this for any reason? I'm editor. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say quickly that in terms of 10-year problems, so the city's budget is developed. The city's budget is developed, what do we call it? Incremental budgeting. So it's this is what we did last year, and we want to give raises. So we're going to add 3% or 5% or 10% of your cops. right? To your budget. It's not, here's what we want to accomplish. And so let's allocate our money based on our priorities. These are the things that we value. So our budget is based on the decisions of the past. It's because we put this money this way. We're putting 44% of our non-debt, like of our non-debt general fund spend into policing because that's what we've historically done, not necessarily because that is aligned with our priorities, because like that's just the way that we've always done it. So just from the outset, like that is the core strategy around our budget. Aside from that, the issues that we're talking about in terms of trash routes, again, completely predictable. Happy to share like videos of the former trash director saying our garbage routes haven't been updated since I think 2009. So there's a video I like from a budget workshop back in 2020 where he's saying we start every day behind. If everybody shows up, we're like 13 routes short, right? Because we haven't updated our routes, our garbage routes, since 2009, right? With all the growth that we hear about in the city. So that is not new. Like that is consistent across the city where we see this kind of small government priority, um, where we see the revenue gap in terms of our structural revenue gap coming from the what do we call it? The cap? Yes, the revenue cap that we have, revenue caps that we have, the multiple revenue caps that we have that restrict the amount of revenue that the city is able to take in. All these things are not new problems. They're just problems that are compounding and will continue to compound. And we also have to watch out because something that we're hearing is that we should repeal the city's revenue cap in order with an exception for public safety, right? So they're already setting it up so that we can shift some of that money toward public safety, not toward trash, right? Not toward Department of Neighborhoods, not toward any of these other services, libraries that doesn't receive any programming funding, not toward housing, specifically public safety. That's what we're being told about the potential of a repeal of the city's revenue cap.
And I think that's why, I mean, that's ultimately what makes the budget sort of overall narrative setting so challenging is because on the one side, we're having to fight for people to believe in a vision of actually responsive, actually democratic, and actually like functional government. And on the other hand, we see local government being continuously reduced to just a police department, basically. So I think like fighting for the vision of that possibility and fighting for, frankly, like revenue measures that are able to keep up with aging infrastructure and with the growing population. And at the same time, I think the incredible challenge of like this perpetually ballooning police budget is, I think that is like the key sort of narrative obstacle that we're going to have to overcome.
Yeah, I think this is a narrative that we're seeing played out all over the place. If anyone for any reason follows what Trump says, about a week or two ago, he said very clearly, the federal government can't pay for daycare. They're not supposed to pay for daycare. They're supposed to pay for military. So he said the quiet part very much out loud. Last question, and then I have some closing notes for folks. A question about what does it look like for an organization that wants to lead a specific area of concern? What does it look like for the frequency of meetings or reporting requirements to the overall campaign? Would you like to chat about that?
Yes, thank you so much for asking this question. I would, if you are interested in being a leading organization, I would actually love to have a one-on-one meeting with you because I think the collaboration has looked really different with different folks. But no reporting requirements for sure. And then I would just encourage basically some level of like however many meetings that y'all need internally to either set goals within your specific issue area, and planning for any events that you want to do to educate. But I think like as a general template, it has been helpful in the past for example, like arts-based organizations, or if there are folks that are really involved in libraries, to have an almost mini town hall that can be basically inviting leaders and organizers, folks who are already active in that area, to make sure they're all caught up with how this issue is specifically is impacting the budget. And yeah, let's definitely be in contact, because we're also going to have like basically campaign organizer meetings that are convening all of these different leaders of issue areas.
All right. Oh, which one am I sharing? Give me 1 second. Wrong screen. All right, folks. Thank you for spending time with us this evening. I want to make a note that 3 notes. That the recording will be posted, and I will. Oh, go ahead, Alice.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to share, I'm going to drop my email in the chat. So if you are interested in being like a campaign leader, please go ahead and send me an email. I saw some really cool ideas happening in the chat.
Yeah, I loved what I was saying. 3 notes. The recording will be posted. We'll be muting whenever y'all mention a name that wasn't a speaker, or a panelist. And then we'll also encourage y'all to attend a training. So we've had plenty of in-person trainings that we do with different youth-led organizations across the city. And people are like, oh, is it going to be hybrid? There's a virtual option? Now you have a full slate of virtual options that work for the team. So our first one is actually this week. Comes really fast, but if you want to figure out for any of your organizations of any age group, how to really foster relationships with media organizations, whether they are hostile ones or ones that are very much on your side. That is a time where we go through how to do that, how to keep up in conversations, how to write a press release, very nitty-gritty things. So if you've never had that introduction, that is a training that's for you. And we have other trainings throughout the year. We have our movement opinion writing training, one of my favorites. If you've never written, if you're scared of writing, that's something that really makes you nervous, you should come to that training. It's for you. And if you really want to write to make sure that we can change the world and make it a better place, please do come through. And I love the movement infrastructure trainings as well. That's an opportunity to really get some conversation going and learn some different tools and skills when it comes to sustaining the work and sustaining movement, or what does it look like to get a movement off the ground. So loved seeing folks come to that training. And lastly, please do support our journalism, right? We always get concerned about legacy or very large media not doing right by us. And Shift Press is one of many journalism organizations in the city that you can support to make sure that we can scale and make sure that conversations like these can go all across the city. So jump into our link tree or follow us on social media and keep in tune and donate. Please support. We need it. Read our articles, share them, talk about them, be very annoying about Shift Press. It'll help out. All that to say, thank you for coming through. Thank you to our panelists one more time. Give them a round of applause as you exit, do the emojis and the comments. Yes, seeing the love, seeing the love, seeing the love.